maybe British cinema doesn't have that, European cinema don't have that, but I think their stories are much more universal. At that point, I saw that film is such a bigger world, and all I knew all my life was Hollywood film.
Okay, welcome back to the newest episode of TTYL, Talk to You Literature. And then today is today our topic is a bit special ya karena tidak cuman akan ngomongin film in general, but we are going to discuss have a discussion, have a conversation about British cinema. Dan tamu saya pada hari ini, tamu saya hari ini nih lebih spesial lagi, jadi nggak kalah spesial dari episode sebelumnya, because today I have I have Yusgunawan here with me. Hello Yus.
Halo semua.
So well, I know Yus for like several years. We met in a movie club in Jakarta, but now I will just leave to Yus. Yus, please introduce yourself to us. Jadi, who are you? What are you doing?
So I met Putri in a Jakarta Cinema Club a few years ago. We both film enthusiasts. So it's pretty cool, Putri, for you to invite me for this conversation. I am not an expert in British cinema, but I watch quite a handful of films. I've seen some British films as well, so it's just nice to be able to share some recommendations, things like that. I'm actually a filmmaker currently based in Jakarta. I mostly do commercial work, iklan digital atau dokumenter pesanan. But I used to I went to school for digital filmmaking and multimedia production in Texas, and I made a few short films there during school and after graduating. And there are some that kayak ada yang menang festival waktu SCTV di sini, ada yang menang kayak Gulf Coast Film Festival there, or got selected to like Philadelphia Film Festival and things like that. It's a while ago, jadi gue udah agak lupa ya. I haven't really made a film for like almost 5 years now. Mostly just been like bikin iklan-iklan yang masuk ke Instagram. But I write scripts on a lot of my spare time, and I'm looking forward to making a little film this year. And I watch a ton of movies, like a ton of movies.
Jadi for you guys, for the audience, if you hear the word a ton, itu literally a ton, because I know you. Kalau dia bilang dia udah nonton a ton of movies, that's like a ton. Yus.
Tahun lalu kalau nggak salah 170-an film.
See, 170 film in a year. Wow. Okay. Mungkin enggak sih, ini agak OOT, tapi kayak what is the latest work that you are working on right now?
Right now I'm making like a sort of like a documentary commercial for Google. I'm writing a script, like a horror script, but it's a family. It's actually like a family drama, but the packaging is horror. Jadi that's gonna be a short film yang hopefully I will get to make sometime this year. That's it.
Wow, project gede itu ya sama Google. Wow. Is it under the same movie studio as Nadine, the base, or you have your own movie studio company?
I have a production house, basically a small production house called Naira Studio. There's like ada three of us partner to form it, basically.
Ingatan pertama tentang teater boneka saya tentu saja ada pada boneka tangan di rumah yang dimainkan oleh kakak-kakak saya yang selalu lebih berhasil bikin saya bangun tidur pagi-pagi daripada ibu saya yang bangunin saya.
Out of this love for puppets, Paper Moon was founded in 2006 by Maria Trisulustiani and her husband Iwan Effendi. What began as a small puppet theater for kids soon found international recognition for tackling more complex and mature themes in their performances for adults, like mortality and political persecution.
Ketika saya dan Iwan membuat Peppermoon pertama kali 12 tahun yang lalu, kami sendirian, bisa dibilang begitu. Teman-teman kami ya orang-orang dengan disiplin yang berbeda gitu. Dari teater, dari seni rupa, ada wayang tapi wayang tradisi misalnya. Saya sendiri tidak pernah belajar seni secara formal. Menggunakan boneka itu seperti kita punya jembatan untuk bicara dengan orang yang lebih banyak. Membicarakan kasus-kasus yang sulit dibicarakan oleh manusia-manusia pada umumnya gitu.
With more than 20 puppet performances, visual art installations, and exhibitions under their belt, Peppermoon has toured in about 10 countries. They've also had residencies in top universities and museums around the world.
Oke, wah, kayak sibuk ini ya Pak.
Masih sempat nonton film kok.
Oh, masih sempat. Oke. Kayaknya nih gue langsung tanyain aja deh. Sebenarnya sih sebagai orang awam sih film yang paling sering kita tonton karena memang exposure-nya gede banget itu kan memang film-film Hollywood ya. Soalnya ya you can watch it pretty much everywhere gitu di cinema, di bioskop kita itu ada. Mungkin kalau kita mau menikmati film-film Europe atau British cinema kan biasanya kalau kita ada film festival atau ada movie week kayak gitu kan. So, well, as my first question, mungkin how do you define British cinema gitu? Kalau gue yang audiens biasa tuh ya berdasarkan baca-baca dari buku ya itu kan kayak ada British actornya, film itu diproduksi oleh British movie industry and so on. Tapi kayak for you personally, how do you see or how do you define that? British cinema tuh gimana sih?
Kalau from my point of view, it's actually mungkin it just comes down to who finance it sama who's the director ya. And I'm sure like a lot of people who are more of an expert in the industry will disagree with me on this, but the way I see it, some films are British because they're mostly financed by Britain. Like one example, and this is the thing, America likes to claim British film as their own sometimes if the films are critically acclaimed. Jadi kayak you have a movie like 2001 A Space Odyssey or Lawrence of Arabia yang maybe some of you who are into movies have at least heard of them. Itu they're basically sometimes considered a Hollywood film, but well, you know, a Hollywood studio might put some money in it. It's mostly a British funded film. So I think the first factor is actually like I will consider them British film. So the first factor I think is the funding, and then I think also the director, because directors have a lot of control, especially more so in the European film industry than American film industry. Because American film industry, there are a lot of blockbusters, so producers have a lot, maybe much bigger power than they do in Europe, because they're the ones who say, well, the film has to make money first and foremost. But I think in Europe, directors are very respected. So I think when you bring a British director on board to a project, the director has got to put in some kind of style or perspective that's very uniquely theirs into the film. So I think that will also make it kind of like a British film. So Alfred Hitchcock's films, they're all made in Hollywood, but there's something still essentially like British about Hitchcock that he brings into the comedy.
Intinya di dua itu lah ya, di fundingnya siapa sama ya director memegang peran yang penting lah ya di film tersebut.
I think so.
Okay, and then ini mungkin pertanyaan sejuta umat ya, but I want to know your opinion since you're a filmmaker gitu. Well, you make movie professionally gitu. What is the differences gitu in British cinema compared to general Hollywood movies that we know? Is there any distinctive elements that is so different gitu compared to Hollywood movies that we know?
Yeah, I think first and foremost itu kalau dari from my perspective, I cannot pinpoint a British cinema movement. Mungkin kalau France have French New Wave, Korean has Korean New Wave, or even India has like the Bengali New Wave gitu. I'm not sure if Britain has something like that in particular because their industry is a lot bigger. But I think Britain is closer in sensibility to British cinema is closer in sensibility to European cinema than American cinema. And European cinema tends to be like more, I think, storytelling oriented more than spectacle oriented. It tends to be more character driven than plot driven. So usually they dig deeper into the character and follow their lives more so than having like a bunch of things happening to them. I think they are. I think in general, lately I've been watching a lot of British films from the 1940s, and I feel like maybe because the people are better educated, because there's a smaller population than in the States. I think the films tend to be more sophisticated in humor, usually in humor. Jadi it's more like humor for the educated people. Jadi I remember when I went to school in the States itu kadang orang-orang Amerika suka make fun of British humor for kayak being too high class gitu. But I think that's just because the population are better educated. Those are the few traits that I can point out ya.
Oke. Tadi lu sempat bilang bahwa di film-filmnya gitu ya, mungkin kayak lebih character driven. What about the pace use? Is it necessarily kayak I don't know ya. Ini sekali lagi karena gue awam gitu ya, karena saya awam. But I may not know prominent atau distinctive British movie, but I follow British series sih, serialnya tuh gue suka nonton. Kayak dan gue lebih spesifik nonton misalnya crime seriesnya gitu ya kan. Kalau misalnya di Hollywood tuh suka mereka ada series tentang FBI lah, tentang LAPD lah, and so on, things like that. Nah, kalau yang di British itu kan mereka ada DTYL or something, mereka ada polisinya sendiri lah. And something that I notice is that pace-nya tuh beda banget gitu. Kalau yang di Hollywood movie ya, itu tends to have more effect, more sound, kayak apalah begitu ada penjahat langsung jedar gitu, kayak langsung gitu. But kalau yang di British series gitu ya, they are patient enough to build the story gitu, walaupun itu terasa pace-nya lebih lambat, but memang kayak well crafted gitu loh, kayak benar-benar setiap karakter di filmnya tuh diceritain background-nya lah, terus ketika mereka ketemu sama penjahatnya juga nggak yang langsung lu yang bunuh ya, lu langsung ya enggak, jadi nggak ada kayak act of domination like that juga nggak terasa. Nah, what about your opinion? Itu kan kalau opini gue, jadi gue merasa pace-nya emang lebih lambat tapi ceritanya lebih luas sudut pandangnya gitu sih kalau menurut gue. What about
I think that's very accurate. I think kayak mungkin I think itu bukan cuma sudut pandang, maksudnya I won't say that sudut pandang penonton awam, bahkan orang-orang yang mungkin udah banyak nonton film pun bisa ngerasa kalau British films tend to be slower. And I think a big part of that comes from the character drivenness in the writing. Jadi I think British audience enjoy stories about people more than the visual effects, than all the explosion and things like that. So for the sake of British audience, the British writers have to do a lot of homework in regards to their characters. So their characters are much more real. Usually the characters are there's a lot of conflict coming from just people talking and arguing. So maybe I don't watch a lot of series, but I've seen Black Mirror, and Black Mirror has some intriguing ideas. But if you think about it, most of the show is just people talking, usually like two people arguing, and that's the bulk of it. And then you have maybe like 15 minutes per episode where there are like visual effects and crazy things going on.
So I think we're pretty much in the same page. Kayak memang ceritanya benar-benar lebih difokuskan di character driven, as you say. Okay, perhaps for my next question well, you're a filmmaker gitu. Terus and then as you said, you have watched like even last year you watched 170 movies gitu. in what way British movie atau British cinema itself affect your point of view in writing your script, in making your movies? Ada efeknya nggak, Yus?
Mungkin maybe not British cinema in particular, but European cinema itu memang menurut gua they are I think they are my role model now, along with Japanese cinema ya. But I think Japanese cinema juga yang lebih arahnya lebih ke character driven. Because Japanese cinema you have like film yang exploitative banget, yang violent banget, yang gak jelas. But you also have like very low key character driven drama. And so this kind of character-driven drama itu is dominant in Europe, I think. Jadi Britain being one of the maybe early exporter of that kind of stories. So for me, there is tremendous influence from European films because I like stories like that. I like stories that stick to a particular character and just maybe like feature a moment in their life that is important to them. It doesn't have to feature like a life altering kind of like conflict atau kayak something that threatens humanity. There's a saying that French film, so this is French film, but I think it can be applied to some British dramas as well. There's the saying that a French film ends where an American film begins, which is usually like an American film. This is like one of the early conflict that set up the story. Kayak whether the character decide they want to make this decision to save someone or not. An American film begins there. French film ends when the character decides, I'm gonna save this person's life. We don't need to see the journey anymore. The decision has been made. So I think there's that kind of like inclination in European cinema, including British films, and that influences me a lot.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think from our short discussion ini very very insightful sih. Khususnya ya balik lagi we get to know that memang in general European movie tend to be more like character driven, terus lebih benar-benar ngembangin plotnya tuh lebih ya itu tadi ya lebih holistic gitu, kayak nggak cuman sekedar menjual efek and so on. Okay, one last question then, mungkin sebagai penutup ya, as a closing, is there any prominent movies, prominent figures that you want to share gitu, kayak lo kalau mau experience apa ya British cinema banget, British movies banget deh, you have to watch this one, you have to try this one.
Yeah, maybe I will make some recommendations. Yeah, I will make like I will recommend 3 films, I think, and 2 actually 2 films and 3 directors. Because yeah, I think the best way to really know more about British cinema is to just start watching the movies. I think starting with the directors, I guess Ken Loach and Mike Leigh, I think they're like maybe some of the prime examples of British drama films. They tend to make movies that heavily focus on like working to middle class characters daily struggle, and they're really really good. Jadi any films by them, but mungkin if you're looking for the more famous example, Ken Loach's Kes and I, Daniel Blake, which was his later film. Mike Leigh made Happy Go Lucky. Some of you might have seen that. That was actually quite popular in Indonesia for a bit. And then there's Mr. Turner. There's a few others. Those I think would be the kind of like filmmakers that's the best place to start, I think. And then I will also recommend an older filmmaker. His name is, it's actually a duo. It's called, their names are Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger. Their movies, I think, is the perfect combination of the Hollywood spectacle and the British kind of like humor and character-oriented sort of like drama and conversation. Like the people like there's a lot of people just talking and having pleasant conversation, having friendly interaction, but there's also like crazy concept like life after death or things like that. And they made most of their films in 1940s, but all the films are like really gorgeous. They're usually shot in color. Amazing cinematography, amazing set design, all that. Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger. Their most famous film is The Red Shoes. I'm sure some of you might have heard of that one. And then there's a few others that are like equally good, like A Matter of Life and Death, and there's The Life and Death of Colonel Blim. But yeah, check out Michael Powell and Pressburger as well. And then lastly, I'm going to recommend two films, not from the filmmaker, but just because they are, I think, my favorite British film personally. These are films that I consider perfect in every respect. Like one of the few films of the thousands I've seen in my life that I will call just like just a film that I think anybody should watch these films. And one of them is called Brief Encounter by David Lean. It's 1.5 hour, extremely short, just like the title, Brief Encounter. It was made in 1945. It's in black and white, but it's a great film about an affair, a woman having an affair with a married man, and a man having an affair with a married woman, and how guilty they feel throughout. Like there's a lot of kind of like introspection involved. It's a magnificent film. I can't describe it more than that. You have to watch it to believe it.
Can I help you?
Oh, no, please, it's only something in my eye.
Please let me look. I happen to be a doctor.
That's very kind of you.
Oh. Shall I see you again? Please.
No, I couldn't possibly.
Next Thursday, the same time. I thought you wouldn't come. How often did you decide that you were never going to see me again?
Several times a day.
So did I. I love you. I love your wide eyes. The way you smile. And the way you laugh at my jokes. Laura.
No, please. We mustn't behave like this. We're neither of us free to love each other. There's too much in the way. The shame of the whole thing. The guiltiness. The fear.
We know we really love each other. That's true. That's all that really matters.
It isn't all that really matters. Other things matter too.
Could you really say goodbye? Never see me again? I love you, Laura. I shall love you always until the end of my life. I know that this is the beginning of the end. Not the end of my loving you, but the end of our being together.
Do you think we shall ever see each other again?
I don't know. Forgive me
Forgive you for what?
for loving you.
I'll forgive you if you'll forgive me.
And the other one is a dark comedy called Kind Hearts and Coronets. This was made in 1948 or released in 1948. It's basically about the kayak anak haram ya gitu, like the half son of a nobleman. Jadi the nobleman passed away and he has like 9 pewaris, 9 heir. And then si anak haramnya ini, because he lived in poverty, because the family did not want to he's actually not anak haram, but I'm making this summary to make it easier. Jadi he lived in poverty and his mom died in poverty, so he wanted to have revenge by killing all 9 of his half siblings who are the official pewaris, the official heir of the nobleman, supaya pewarisnya jadinya dia aja. But it's funny as hell. It's really, really funny. It's a dark comedy. And all 9 pewaris itu, the rival, basically the antagonists, be them men or women, are all played by the same actor, who is the same actor that played Obi-Wan Kenobi in the original Star Wars, Alec Guinness.
Wow, that's
Yeah, it's amazing. It's funny.
Baru dengar aja udah mind blown. What?
Really high concept.
Okay.
It's funny as hell. So yeah, I checked those two out.
Madam, Lord Gascoigne is not aware of your son's existence as a member of the Gascoigne family.
It's very stupid, since one day you might be Duke of Chalfont.
The Gascoignes were the obstacle between me and my birthright.
I could almost wish those people should all die tomorrow.
I suddenly conceived a brilliant idea. What could I take from them? Perhaps their lives.
My late son.
A great loss.
I really wouldn't be surprised if you'd murdered them all. One could almost believe there was a curse on our unfortunate family.
Indeed, sir, one could. It took a mere 3 minutes to substitute petrol for the paraffin.
What is it?
Oh, they're just burning some leaves at the bottom of the garden.
It's clear that you are insane. What harm can there be in one glass of wine?
What harm indeed. You rob me of words. Suppose we drink on it. I might be a duke one day.
Pigs might fly.
Check those two out.
Oke, sorry Yus, satu pertanyaan lagi. Because along the way tadi gue agak intrigued sih Yus. Well, you have mentioned before that you take your film study in Texas, kan? But nevertheless, along the way, you feel like in the way you write your movies itu kayaknya lebih terpengaruh European movies gitu ya. And then when did that happen gitu? After you finish your study atau because your own reflection, your own decision, or what happened?
Yeah. Yes, I think actually happened after I finished my study. So I worked for 1.5 years in the States before I went back. And I met a group of, they also just graduated college like me from a university. They majored in English. And they were really into films, much more so than my fellows at film school, who were mostly into technology, who were mostly into, they want to make Hollywood quality stuff. But these people, they're from a small town. They watch movies from Japan. They watch Koreeda. They introduced me to Koreeda, these like small town white boys. And so I think at that point I saw that film is such a bigger world. And all I knew all my life was Hollywood film, and mostly just because they had the biggest marketing budget. So from that point on, I began to see film as more a tool to kind of like unite in a way, you know. It's something where everyone can share their culture through film. Everyone, no matter how different you are, you can find commonality in film. So I think that European cinema actually has more of that. They're more inclusive. Even though American films might be more diverse in cast, you know, like, oh, they have to cast white people. They even have rules to cast black people, to cast Asian. Maybe British cinema doesn't have that. European cinema don't have that. But I think their stories are much more universal. And you can be Indonesian, you can be an Indian, you can be a Mexican, you can be an American. But you can relate to a lot of their stories more than the Hollywood stories. So I think that's why.
Okay, so yeah sih, in a way I personally also feel that way gitu. Mungkin ya balik lagi ya, as you said, because the movie atau the script itself is well crafted gitu, karena dia memang focus on the characters, so that walaupun nggak harus di casting dia orang Asian or something ya, kita bisa relate based on the story yang di reveal gitu kali ya. Okay, Yus, I think this has been such a great talk. I had a great time talking here with you. Terima kasih banget udah mau jadi guest. Is there semoga ya, mungkin ini sih, semoga project-project yang currently you're working on semoga sukses dan lancar sampai semuanya selesai.
Amin. Semoga makin banyak orang menikmati film-film seperti ini di Indonesia juga.
Iya.
Ya.
Oke deh. Oke. Terima kasih ya Yus ya. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights as well. Thank you.